Hello, Anna. Hello, Paulina.
Hello, good afternoon.
Uh, how are you today?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Good. I've just actually run from some IELTS exams that I had in Polanco in Mexico City.
Okay.
If I'm looking a bit sweaty, that's why.
And the weather doesn't help at all.
Well, it's very hot and dry at the moment. Very sunny. Lots
Yeah,
of UV radiation.
a lot. And I think it is harder in Mexico City than here in Toluca.
Uh, it's hotter, but yeah, I think you get lots of ultraviolet radiation there as well.
And for white
Um,
skin, I think it's even worse.
yeah. So, I think we should get started. Um, because with the people who arrive late, well, they've got the recording, yeah? So, welcome, Victor. Welcome, Sheila.
Hi, actually, it's Humberto. I'm sorry. I'm using my brother's laptop, and that's why it says Victor, but it's actually Humberto Guillen.
Okay,
I'm
let me
gonna see if
change
I
it
can.
for you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Umberto. So, here's the menu for today. We'll have an overview of the IELTS speaking paper. And we'll actually listen to some IELTS extracts from IELTS interviews, and we'll try and figure out what grade they got in the exam, in the speaking exam. And we'll look at the three parts in detail and some tips for preparing students, finishing with our usual quiz about the speaking exam. And as it's the very last, well, it's the penultimate session we'll have. So I'll give you a little questionnaire about what you want to do in the final session at the end. So here is, you're going to need the masterclass handout again, and please open it at the descriptors for speaking on page 27. So it's the descriptors for speaking, page 27. We're going to need that. Because having a good idea of how the speaking exam is graded is going to be essential to you as teachers. I kind of know these off by heart because I whisper, I'm an actual speaking examiner. So these are pretty much recite these like the Padre, Our Father prayer. So let's get started, shall we? We'll go through the masterclass slides first, right? And then we'll work towards like practical tips. Let me just take the attendance for the first few minutes. There we go. Done. We just got Nicole joining us. Hi, Nicole. So this is the masterclass advice for the first part, for the speaking part of the test, sorry. Aye. What are the advantages of doing the IELTS speaking? Well, unlike perhaps the TOEFL, which I think is a little bit rigid and doesn't allow much free communication, there is genuine real-life communication between the candidate and the examiner. So I think that's one thing it's like a big selling point of IELTS actually, is the it's genuinely communicative, the speaking between candidate and examiner. And the examiners are listening for different language skills in each part of the test. So in part one, it's the ability to talk about yourself, your likes and dislikes. And it's important to be able to answer the question why when discussing what you like or dislike, or what the candidate likes or dislikes. Part two is how well you're able to organize and present a short talk, 1 to 2 minutes. And part two lasts about 4 minutes compared to 5 minutes for part one and 5 minutes for part three. And part three is your ability to participate in a two-way discussion. Now, examiners must keep to set timings for each part of the test. It is, after all, a standardized test. So they may have to stop or interrupt the candidates if the time runs out in any part of the speaking test. So that's perfectly normal. And so we need to train or make our students aware that if the examiner interrupts them, it's not because they don't agree with what they're saying. It's just the timing, right? Yeah. For IELTS on computer, the speaking test is mainly face-to-face, right? But in some parts of Mexico, particular, and Peru, and I think Chile, they do have what's called VCS, video call speaking, right, which is through computer. Yeah, but most of the time, the students can expect it to be face to face in a room on their own with the examiner, unless they're under 18, right? Now, if they're under 18, they're menores, so there's a chaperone, right? It's like a IELTS staff member that sits with them. Just in case you've got teenagers, younger ones. So how will you be scored? Right, now you've got the band descriptors in your masterclass handout. So please open at page, I think it's 25. And if you've just arrived, open it at page 25. Have a look at the band descriptors. Now, the first one, fluency and coherence. Look at the band descriptors. What's the second one? The second column.
Sorry, it was 25.
Or 25 or 26, I can't remember.
20...
Oh, it's 27.
No, 27,
Sorry,
no?
27.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank
Yeah. Now, this is the public version that's shared with the public. It's slightly different for the actual examiners, so it's regarded as confidential. But it's pretty much the same. So the second one is what?
Lexical resource.
Lexical resource, yeah. So each one counts 25% of the mark. Fluency and coherence, how far you can maintain a flow of speech without giving pauses, without long pauses, hesitations, or false starts. I mean to say false starts, yeah. That means like when you start speaking and then you change your mind and go in a different direction. And the way you use connecting words and signaling words to make the relationship between your ideas clear. Sometimes called discourse markers. And then lexical resource. That's the range and accuracy of your vocabulary. Whether you can express yourself precisely without repeating the same words and using the correct style. Okay, so after lexical resource, it's what?
Grammatical and range of accuracy. Grammatical range and accuracy, sorry.
Accuracy, yes. So that's the range and complexity of your grammar and how accurately you can use it. And the final one? Pronunciation. Thank you, Nicole. All right, so pronunciation is, do you use pronunciation to convey and enhance meaning? Or is your pronunciation an obstacle to meaning? To what extent does the accent cause strain for the listener? Now, examiners are trained to have an international ear and that all forms of standard English are acceptable, you know, whether it's American, British, Irish, Australian, New Zealand, Indian, right? So all forms of standard English are acceptable in the IELTS speaking test. You know, accent is not very important. To achieve a high mark, you must show that you can use a wide range of pronunciation features such as rhythm, stress, and intonation, and talk at an appropriate speed with good control of individual sounds. So, So it's a good idea to use English for everyday things like talking about food, hobbies, the weather, because this is essential practice for parts 1 and 2 of the test. In part 3, it gets more abstract and sometimes a bit more academic. But for part 1 and 2, think about chatting, small talk, so on. Now, here's a little bit more information on each of these. So, lexical resource. Do you have enough words to express yourself clearly? Have enough vocabulary to discuss a range of topics? You use vocab accurately. You can explain yourself when you do not have the right word. Common mistake, use long words not really knowing what they mean. Grammatical range. 2 key points. Avoid mistakes, especially with verb reference, tense, time references. Use a range of grammatical structures, not simple subject, verb, object, but more complex clauses like embedded within sentences, right? Because that's what they're looking for if you want to get a 7 or above, right? Band 6, you'd be expected to be able to use, relative clauses with which and who and when and that sort of thing. When you've got a main clause and a subordinate clause, with reasonable accuracy. But with 7, you need to be thinking about more sophisticated structures. Now, fluency and coherence. Fluency is a combination of speed, length of answer, pausing correctly. Coherence, you can expand on your answers, answer the questions directly, add relevant detail to explain or illustrate. Connect your sentences by using tenses and connectors and what we call discourse markers. You should note that very fast or very long answers are not necessarily good, as you may be penalized for poor pronunciation or lack of coherence. Yeah, they're not looking for a word salad, right? I'm not sure if Donald Trump would always get a good grade on IELTS, yeah, because he's sometimes not very coherent, is he? He just sort of rambles, yeah. Even his pronunciation is not great either at times. So, it's possible for non-native speakers to not get the highest grade in pronunciation because, they don't always enunciate their words in a clear way, right? So features of good pronunciation include the basic words pronunciation, vowels, consonants, and the syllables stressed within the words, linked speech sounds, so how words link together appropriately, the correct sentence stress, whether content words are stressed, words that are important to show the listener that these are important words they should take notice of, and the correct use of intonation. This could be to indicate a yes/no type question that requires a no or yes answer, or a WH question, or to show their attitude to something, right? Or refer back to something mentioned earlier. Now, there's no need to have a British or American accent, right? So probably it's best not to, waste time trying to develop students' accents. Yeah, just focus on these basic areas, and you could still get a high grade in pronunciation while still having a strong accent. I mean, I've examined like French people who maintain their accent, but they cover all these areas like center stress, intonation very well, right? Despite the maybe pronouncing as the, yeah. I caught the bus, right? But they were still comprehensible, so they still got good grades in the pronunciation. Now, we're going to watch some speaking, parts of a speaking exam. Shall we? And I'd like you to take notes under each of these areas, okay? And also have your masterclass handout open at page 27. All right, so I'm going to ask you once the interview is done, I'd like you to try and tell me what grade this candidate got, and it's Ashish from Nepal. All right, so be prepared to tell me what band he got. This is a two-way discussion. So this is part 3 of the test. Right? And notice as you listen that it's more abstract topics. It's less personal. Yeah. And in fact, the examiners they often tell the candidates to talk in general, right? Don't talk about your own experience here. Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. That is that's part 1, right? Sorry, I thought it was. I think maybe later on, it's part 3. Yeah, okay. So part of it's part 3 and part of it's part 1. Okay. So you'll notice the difference in the style of the topics. In part 1, it's much more familiar. Part 3, much less so. Okay, let's
I'm
listen.
sorry, it's just that there is no sound. I couldn't hear.
Oh, you couldn't hear? Oh, I know what I've done. It's my mistake. What I haven't done is I need to share sound on Zoom. That's what I haven't done. Sorry. I need to turn the sound up as well. There we go. There we go.
Let's talk about what you do. Do you work or are you a student?
Yes, I am both actually. I work part-time as well as a student.
What job do you do?
I'm an payroll controller. I control the payroll in a property management company.
Do you meet interesting people in your job?
Not many, but yes, sometimes I have to visit the banks and the sites, so yes, I do.
How long have you been doing this sort of work?
For a year and a half now.
Let's go on to talk about friends now. Are your friends mostly your age or different ages?
No, many different ages.
Why?
Where it ranges. It's basically because I am not from this place. I'm from back Nepal, and when I came here, I met people from my country as well as people from different places at work and at different places. So they're all over the place.
Do you usually see your friends during the week or at weekends?
It depends. I'd see them all over the week, I think. Work friends at work, after work drinks and things like that. So yeah, all throughout the week.
Okay. The last time you saw your friends, what did you do together?
We went out for a movie last Saturday. Um, there was this interesting movie that we heard was out on due date, so we all decided to go for it, and it was pretty nice.
In what ways are your friends important to you?
Oh, they are very important to me because I hate to be lonely. I need to talk to someone every now and then because I can't just sit, not to say do nothing, but I need someone to confront and talk to. So I hold them, I give them a great importance in my life.
I'd like to move on to talk about food and cooking now. What kind of food do you like to eat?
I like Asian food quite a lot. Because it's because of its taste, its variety, and things like that.
What kind of new food would you like to try?
That would be French. Pure French food, I would say.
Why?
I've heard a lot about it, but because of its taste, its originality. So, but I haven't got a chance to have the original French food as yet. So yeah, I would like to try that.
Do you like cooking?
No, that's not just my cup of tea. Not at all.
Why not?
I don't know. I've been here for 3 years now, and I am a single. I live alone with my friends, but it just does not come into me. Even when I enter the kitchen, I think I go grocery shopping and I do things, but once I enter the kitchen, I just end up making some noodles and just 2-minute food, and that's it. I end up having that, but I never got into cooking. And one interesting thing, I don't know the taste of salt. So I don't know. If I cook and I call my friends over, it would be a disaster.
What was the last meal you cooked?
That was tough. Just noodles again. I would say no pasta. 2 minutes food again.
We've been talking about a well-known person you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, famous people in your country. What kind of people become famous nowadays?
These days in my country, people who become famous are politicians, I should say, because since the time we've entered into democracy, they've come into a lot of media attention, and they've because of their the manner the way they've been doing things for the betterment of the country, they've come into a lot of attention. And also with the improving media in my country, the stars over there, movie stars, have come into great attention.
Why do you think politicians and movie stars are famous and popular throughout the world?
Movie stars and singers undoubtedly are famous all over the world because of what they do. They entertain people and the way they do things. And politicians, I think, gain attention tend to gain attention on their take over the country, of what they're doing for the betterment of the world, for the betterment of the country, sorry, and what steps they are taking to do much better, or how they're going about it.
How would you compare the famous people today with the famous people of the past?
Big difference between the two. Back then, there wasn't so much of media attention, I could say so. As far as I know, famous people used to be role models, and they used to be good role models. But these days, famous people are role models, yet for many of them, students as well as adults. But can we call them all good models? I don't think so.
So do you really think that famous people in the past behaved better, or is it just that we don't know what they did in their private life?
It's probably a bit of both. They behaved a lot better because since we've become more advanced these days, we can do what we feel like. These days, most celebrities and famous people take things for granted and do what they like.
What kinds of people do you think will be famous in the future?
Continuing to be movie stars and singers, and some people who really make changes to the world. I could say so. Other than that,
Do you imagine that in the future maybe people who are more worthy of fame will become famous, like scientists and writers?
up till some extent, yes, because if they are really they are really covered, I mean they really put themselves out to the world, then yes, they could get famous. But I would still say not as much as celebrities.
Okay, let's go on and talk about celebrity culture. For example, how are famous people used in advertising?
Famous people are used in they are used in advertising these days for a lot. We can see football stars, almost all the sports stars are into advertising, including the movie stars and singers as well. The way they put themselves, because they are famous people, the marketing people think that they are going to get they will sell their product much better.
Why is that, do you think?
Because of, like I said before, because they are their role models. So people will think that, oh, he's doing that, so I can do that as well, and people will tend to follow their footsteps.
Do you think people really do that? That they will buy something because a famous person?
Yes, I do.
uses it?
Sometimes advertisement makes a big difference to sales. I've been there, and I can say yes, they do quite often.
Do you think that there could be some negative effects of this culture of celebrity on young people especially?
Yes, to a great extent. There has been a lot of because people take celebrities as their role models, and the celebrities have misused their fame and power and money up till to do things that they should not. Sometimes, yes, I think that it will create a negative effect especially on young people more than adults.
All right, thank you very much, Ashish. That's the end of the speaking test.
Thank you.
All right. So think about your grades. What grade would you give him? So think about the four. So what would you give him for fluency and coherence? What would you give him for lexical resource? What for grammatical range and accuracy? And what for pronunciation? Now, I'll give you a clue. Like the overall grade is higher than 7. Yeah, higher than 7, but lower than 9. So think about each of those. Put your grade in the chat. So like FC, what would you give him? LR, what would it be? Umberto says 8. Is that overall or just for fluency and coherence, Umberto? It's the average, right? And total, yeah. Okay. Carla says 7.5 or 8. Ah. Why do you say 7.5, Carla?
I don't know. I think it's higher than 7, a little bit higher,
Yeah.
but not as to reach an 8.
What takes him down from an 8 in your opinion?
I think pronunciation, but I don't know. And I would
You'll be surprised. It's not pronunciation.
I
You're
would-
right. You're right. It's not an 8. You got the grade right, 7.5. But which one of those sort of brings him down a little bit?
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, Nicole says fluency and coherence 8. You're right, it is. Yeah, because he speaks fluently and answers the questions easily, though there is some hesitation, repetition, and self-correction. This is mainly related to the content, and only rarely is it to search for language, right? So he is stopping to think, but it's mainly about what he's going to say, language he's going to use, right? That will be the difference between a 7 and an 8, because a 7 you're thinking thinking more about the language you're going to use. And he uses markers flexibly, like I am both, basically, as well as every now and again. That would be French. So the one that he wasn't an 8 on was lexical resource. Yeah? Because
Let's talk about what
sorry.
you do.
So 7.5 overall. I mean, if you got an 8, that was pretty good. I think that's acceptable. It's acceptable to be within half a grade, yeah? So fluency and coherence. Those are the comments. Lexical resource, okay, was less strong. He uses idioms and collocations, but makes some mistakes all over the place. That's not just my cup of tea. Yeah, you say that's not really my cup of tea. And also, some of these expressions are a little bit overused in common speech. Yeah, he didn't actually say it was raining cats and dogs, but you know, a lot of people from the Indian subcontinent often use these rather old-fashioned idioms. Yeah, so that's might be something that would take him from an 8 to a 7. Someone to confront and talk to. I think it would be interact, right, and talk to. But grammatical range and accuracy, that was good. 8. Sentences mostly error-free, wide range of structures. Yeah, which doesn't surprise me because Nepal is actually, I think it's English is like one of their official languages, so they're supposed to be pretty good at it, right? And he's obviously an educated Nepalese person. Pronunciation. You'd be surprised that was an 8 as well. He uses a wide range of pronunciation features and is able to use stress and intonation effectively. Only a few problems with the forming of some sounds, like but for both, vent for went. Yeah. So that would stop him getting a higher grade, even higher. So that would be the difference between, because you know his speech is comprehensible, perfectly comprehensible. It's just there is a little bit of an accent, that's all, that might prevent a little the comprehensibility, the intelligibility of his speech. Now, we'll do the same again with someone from China. All right. So please have your band descriptors ready. Let's begin. Let me just check I've got the sound right this time. Yeah. Yeah. So same procedure.
Now, we've been talking about a well-known person you like or admire, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this. Let's consider, first of all, famous people in your country.
Yep.
So in China, what kind of people become famous?
Politicians, the pop stars, and sports stars. It's similar with the other countries, I think.
Is one of those groups more popular than others?
It depends, because for like politicians, you have to know them because they appear all the time on televisions or newspapers. But for some pop stars, because it's especially famous for the young people, because the young people like to follow the stars and the new trends. But for sports stars, they mainly become famous during some Olympic games or some competitions. So it really depends. Yeah.
What about in the past? Were those same people famous in the past? Politicians, sports stars, and pop stars?
I think so, because even sorry, I have talked with my parents at their age, and when they was young, they also follow some pop stars and the sports stars, and for the politicians, they change quite often. So yeah, they're also famous. Yeah.
And how about the future? Where do you think it's going to go?
I think this kind of people will remain famous in the future. This type of people, because we still have lots of new pop stars, sports stars, and some new politicians. But I think some other people will join them as well. For example, notice some like entrepreneurs. For example, the founder of the Facebook, he's famous for everyone. Even some not weird but strange people like the founder of the WikiLeaks. He's also popular because the things has done. So I think this kind of new raising group people will join the famous people in the future.
And do you think technology is going to be the place where many of our famous people come from in the future?
Definitely, because I think notice most of people use the Facebooks, the Twitters, so definitely this kind of website or the new technology will help to make people famous. And I think many people are working on it because there are special companies to make these people famous through the internet, the advertisement or the promotion. Yeah.
Now let's talk about celebrity culture. Often famous people are used in advertising.
Yep.
Can you give me some examples of that?
Well, it's quite often, we can see lots of famous people on the television. For example, like one typical example is the Michael Jordan, because he is actually, when the first time the Nike become very famous, it's because Michael Jordan, because he is the first, he's the first NBA stars, to sign a company to have the, serious commercials for specific companies. And I think that's a typical example, how the famous people to help the company successful, and also the company use his money to make the stars become more famous. So I think it's, yeah.
And that example you're talking about with Michael Jordan, he's a basketball player who was promoting a product that he was personally involved in producing. What about celebrities who endorse products for which they have no personal connection?
Yeah, it's quite often because people are profit oriented. Because we can see lots. I think for some like makeup production, we can see lots of famous female stars. They just say, okay, this one's so good, it's fantastic. Nobody know whether she's used it or not. Yeah, I think sometimes it depends on this is ethnic choice. Someone they really try it and use it and then say, okay, this one's fine, it's good. So we can rely on it, but some of them just want to get the money. So it's just do the promotion stuff without really using it or testing it.
Now, how about our young people? How might famous people or celebrities have a negative impact on our young people?
Well, as we know, some famous people is not that good. I have to say, I cannot say they're immoral, but the actions they have done is really bad. The example for the young kids or the young generation, because some of them once they become the famous, they just try to drugs, stay in the clubs, all day, not all day, but all the night, and definitely, young people sometimes cannot distinguish good things or the bad things. Sometimes they just follow the star's actions. So it makes, some of them just, say, it's pretty cool thing, to try some drug because that star is trying it, or many stars are trying it. Or it's pretty cool, to stay with girls all the time, different girls all the time. Some my, idol, he's doing the same thing. So I think it's pretty bad negative effects on the young people.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's the end of the speaking test.
Thanks.
No. Put your grades in the chat. If possible, give 1 for each. Fluency, coherence, lexical resource, GRA, and prawn. Brian from China, what do you think? An 8, Paulina. possibly a little generous.
It's just that I didn't listen that much repetition, though he spoke like really fast, and it was kind of hard to follow like all his expressions.
Yeah.
But only by perhaps with fluency and coherence.
Yeah. No, don't confuse speed with actual
Yeah, no.
coherence. Yeah.
But yeah, it was like too fast, but he didn't, well, I didn't notice too much hesitation,
Uh-huh.
but I don't know. Perhaps like between 7.5 or 8, according to fluency.
Yeah.
I don't.
No. Carla has it right. Overall a 6. And also Anna.
Mm.
He spoke fast, but I didn't understand him. What was it that you didn't understand, Anna? Was it the coherence aspect? Was it the lexis, the grammar, or the pronunciation? Coherence and pronunciation. Yes, I agree. That was the issue for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't give me a breakdown of the different parts, the 4, but I'm assuming it was 6 across the board. Or maybe one was 5 and one was 7, so that would take it to an overall 6. But yes, it's an overall 6. Yeah. And let's look at why. So you get to band 6 in this, and this is part 3, right? The final part of the exam, where they're talking about more abstract topics. We can see he's willing to give extended answers, but that there is a lack of coherence as a result of hesitation and repetition. He overuses certain fillers. Well, like, cause, yeah. He does, however, use a reasonable range of linking words, like, for example, actually, as a result. Yeah. He uses grammatical constructions well to introduce his ideas by having a hobby, by doing sports. So maybe slightly higher than a 6, but yeah, lack of coherence because of hesitation and repetition and overuses fillers. For me, that would take him from a 7 to a 6, despite the use of linking words. Right. Now, on to fluency. Sorry, lexical resource. The range of vocabulary is enough to be able to discuss topics at length and show some ability to use less common expressions in collocation. Like, get on very well with each other, increase money for the charity, good for the community, a developed country, psychologically, physically. Sometimes he makes the wrong word choices, but his meaning is clear and he conveys his ideas and opinions quite effectively. Like fast speed work, relieve themselves after work. But he isn't always aware of register or style. So he uses words that are too informal, like gun and wanna. Yeah, for the situation. So it's a bit inappropriate. On to grammatical range and accuracy. He produces a range of structures and a mix of simple and complex sentence forms. when using more complex structures, his control isn't always good. Like, they just want to get big car, big house. And that's the reason that forces them to work very hard than before. But the meaning is clear, right? So that's the difference between a 6 and a 7. You use complex sentences, but they're not very accurate, right? In 5, simple sentences are basically well constructed. Subject, verb, object sentences. In terms of pronunciation, there is it's generally clear, some use of stress and intonation to convey meaning, but generally the intonation is rather flat. It's not going very up and down very much on words. This can also be a problem with Spanish speakers, eh? So try and bring their attention to that. The rhythm is also a little mechanical. Some words are mispronounced, which sometimes leads to a loss of clarity. Example, whale for while, lera for leisure, louts for lots. Yeah. So, yeah, it wasn't going to get a 7 on that. Yeah. Because there'd be more consistently accurate pronunciation of individual words. All right. Now, I don't want to overdo these candidate things because it's all right, but it can get a bit too much after a while and you lose concentration. So I think we should move on to some tips for teaching, activities to develop speaking skills. Now, if you're teaching speaking skills, do you know of any frameworks for lessons, lesson frameworks? Do you know of any? Yeah, that's Sheila, that's another good reason to not continue with the audios, I think, yeah? So, because she's having difficulty with sound. For those who've done the CELTA, you might be familiar with, or indeed the Delta, you might be familiar with the productive skills framework. It applies both to speaking and writing, right? In which we often have how many stages are there? Well, there's usually a lead in, 3 to 4 minutes to prepare them for the topic. Then preparation stage, in which we often use an audio, a model text, could be a dialogue for speaking. If it's a writing lesson, well, obviously it'd be a model text, right? And we do some work to make them aware of the different, maybe the structure of the dialogue, and some of the useful language, often these connectors to help them increase their fluency, right? And then in a 45-minute lesson, you might do 10 to 15 minutes of extended speaking, right? Okay, so let's just remove those because it's not a writing lesson, it's a speaking lesson. With feedback on content, it's like their ideas, how well they're expressed, and the actual language used. So you can have that whiteboard. Now, so how can you prepare that? That's, you know, general idea for a speaking lesson. But you can adapt that for the IELTS because you could, I don't know, show them part one. Right, so speaking part one is more familiar activities, familiar topics. You could give them these little flashcards on something like Quizlet, and you flash them the topics. Do you like eating healthy food? And get the students to speak for 30 to 40 seconds using complete answers. Encourage them to use these explanations and reasons, as well as phrases to introduce and add more information. Another thing is, as well as this, firstly, secondly, thirdly. Phrases to give examples. For instance, perfect example of this is, well, one time this happened. So, take a screenshot of that, right? These are phrases that are often used in part one. And it's useful to teach them. Yeah. IELTS examiners listen out for these expressions, and it could make the difference between getting a 6 and getting a 7. Yeah. On to part 2. Here are some typical expressions. And you could get them to possibly put these phrases in order according to whether they're likely to appear at the beginning of the talk. Remember, part 2 is a talk, 1 to 2 minutes. So we need to teach them expressions to be able to order and make their talk logical and coherent, don't we? You know? So you can see that these expressions are numbered. But yeah, they're all going to be useful for this talk about a time you visited a friend or a relative's house. Okay, so why don't we try this? I'm going to copy this and put it into the chat. Yeah. 5:56. There we go. Now, have you got a pen or a pencil? Can you find one? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a minute to prepare your talk. And then I'm going to put you into pairs in breakout rooms, and I'd like you to speak for 1 to 2 minutes to your partner. Okay, and your partner should time you using your phone, the timer on your phone, yeah? Or on your watch, if you've got a smartwatch, yeah? So, describe a time when you visited a friend or relative's house. You should talk about when you went there. Oops. Who was there, what you did while you were there, and say how you felt during your time at that parent's house, that person's house. Yeah. So in your 1 minute, you should make notes piece of paper under these topics. So when, who was there, what you did, how you felt. Okay, 1 minute. And then I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and you can talk, practice. So I'll start the clock for 1 minute. It's the clock. Ah. All right, time's up. Now, obviously in the live exam, they don't give you these expressions. But when you're training your students, you can actually give them the expressions because you're scaffolding the talk, aren't you? Right. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. So each person, 6 minutes. How about that? Each person should talk. Now, there's one group that has 3 people in it, and it's Nicole, Paulina, and Sheila. All right. At the end of the talk, ask follow-up questions to your partner. How often do you visit this person's house? Why or why not? Do you like visiting other people's houses? Right. Why do we have a follow-up question? Well, in the actual exam, the examiner asks a follow-up question at the end. Right. So that's to make it realistic. Any queries before we begin? Sheila, what are you going to do in the breakout rooms?
We're going to talk about the topic you had on the screen for 1 to 2 minutes.
Right.
I could
yeah.
I could hear that.
And at the end, what will happen?
I was able to. I mean, after we talk about that, we're gonna ask each other questions.
Right,
You know,
just
follow-up
how many
questions.
questions? 1 or 2?
One,
Yeah,
because of the
in the actual
time,
exam.
right?
Yeah, in the actual exam, yeah, you won't have much time. And in the actual exam, it's only 1 question usually that the examiner asks at the end, you know. And it's just the
Okay.
function there is just to
Yeah.
round off and finish the talk. Okay. So I'll put you into the breakout rooms. You've got about 6, 7 minutes. 6 minutes should be enough, shouldn't it? Go ahead. So you're both talking on the same topic, but listen and ask the questions. Right, so how did you do?
I think we needed more time.
Yeah, well, you've got to be strict
So it's
with
a
the
good practice
times. Yeah, you've got
to
to be
try to.
yeah.
Yes, I
Strict
know,
with the
yeah.
times if you're doing this with your students, because the examiner will stop the candidates at 2 minutes, right? They just say
Yeah.
thank you, right? And
Mhm.
that's the signal they should stop speaking, right? Even if they're in mid-flow, it doesn't matter. The teacher, the examiner will stop them at the
Mhm.
2 minute mark because they've got their timer in front of them, right? They're very well trained to stop students from carrying on, right? And then they ask the follow-up question. Yeah, and then they move on to part 3. Simple as that. Now, what could be useful when you are teaching part 3 is use the PPF strategy. Any idea what PPF means? Have a look at these example sentences here. Look at the task card below. Some extracts from how a candidate answered the question. What do you think PPF stands for?
Like past, present, and future?
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Yeah. So this strategy can help you in part 3. Sorry. It should say part 3, not part 2. That's a mistake. Okay. Because it's the long turn, the talk. So when they're preparing in their 1 minute, they can make notes on the past, present, and future, and that will help them to think of plenty of things to say, right? Because sometimes they dry up. The examiner will encourage them to speak longer, right? Sometimes they prompt the student by saying, "Could you tell me a little bit more about where you went?" Yeah. But that might mean that they get lower on the fluency if if the examiner has to prompt them, right? If they have to prompt them too much, yeah, maybe you're not going to get that 7. That they won't get the 7 they were expecting. Yeah. They can also use like spider diagrams or like visual organizers when they're making their notes on their piece of paper. So think about that when you're training them. For part 2, yeah, some of them get quite nervous about speaking for 2 minutes. It seems like a long time for them. Okay. Now on to part 3. Take turns with your partner to ask these questions and answer your partner's questions. Try to use a range of different expressions to express your opinions. Yeah. So, for comparing, Sheila, could you read some of those expressions for comparing?
Sure. There are many differences. The main difference is whereas, while, X is while, whereas Y is. Note, remember to use comparative structures, more special, less healthy, not as unhealthy as.
Good. Could you read the ones about talking about the past as well?
Sure.
Yeah.
At one time, X years ago, when I was, my parents were young. Note, remember to use past tenses. talking about the present, nowadays, these days, currently, presently, at the moment, and remember to use present tenses.
Yeah. And Jorge, could you read speculating for us?
I think in the future will definitely want, will probably want. I doubt that. Will, might not, may not, could, if, the structure, if plus present will, may, might, plus the infinitive.
Uh-huh. And then we've got giving reasons, like the main reason. This is because I think there are several reasons for this. And we've got agreeing. That's true. Completely agree. No, remember, I'm agreeing. No. In IELTS, definitely we don't want to get that. I agree to a certain extent. Absolutely. I'm not sure I entirely agree. I disagree. I don't agree. Right? Not. I am disagree. Introducing opinion. I think, I really believe, I suppose, and in my opinion. All right, so I'd like you to work in pairs again. Ask these questions and answer your partner's questions. Try to use a range of expressions to express your opinions. Now, number one, do you think people will work from home more in the future rather than traveling to their place of work? Why or why not? Is this past, present, or future?
Future.
Yeah, so use the speculating expressions for that, right? Now, these are all part 3 topics, yeah? They're often less personal topics. Number 2, in your opinion, is it better to phone someone or speak face to face? What expressions might you use for this?
Giving reasons.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. And also the final
Introducing opinion.
introducing opinion. Many people believe it is more convenient to buy clothes on the internet rather than in a shop. What's your point of view? Why?
There's where you use giving reasons.
Yeah, giving reasons again. Number 4, many people prefer to buy rather than rent. Do you think that's a good idea?
You
What
could
do you
use
think they're going to...
agreeing or disagreeing, perhaps.
Agreeing or disagreeing, yes. But also
Comparing.
comparing, yeah. And number 5, better to live at home with your parents when you're studying at university? What do you think? Oh, sorry. Moved it by accident. There we go. Number 5 then. Better to live at home. Probably opinion, right? But also some comparing. Because implied, one is better than the other, right? Yeah. Okay, let me just share this with you, and then I'll put you into breakout rooms. You can have a quick go at that one. Please find it. You can work with the same partner as last time. I'll just give you a time limit on this. Try and speak as much as you can for 6 minutes. Let me recreate maybe 3 rooms. Yeah. Begin. Please join Paulina, Sheila, if you can. Okay, I'm going to move Paulina to a different room then. There you go. How was it?
It is interesting because even when we are the ones that teach our students, when we face this situation, even as a rehearsal or as a practice, we tend to stay in blank sometimes. Like we're
Yeah.
checking the time and trying not to overpass it, but not stop so that we don't hesitate, etc. So it's kind of a tricky thing.
Ah.
Yeah, it was quite a challenge to me.
Did you notice that when you use these like chunks or sentence starters, it gives you a bit of thinking time. Yeah. So while you're saying the sentence starter, I think that in the future we definitely won't. You know, you're already giving yourself time to think about what you're going to say next. So that's one important reason to teach them, right? This sort of idea that you can use chunks of language, prefabricated chunks that are stored in the memory, right? Because that's what native speakers do. They're not like reconstructing sentences from the subject, verb, object all the time, right? It's this lexical approach to language that can help them actually sound more fluent. Yeah? So I would recommend, yeah, using that strategy. What else can we use for our teaching? Well, here are some common when actually teaching these expressions. You can use like a interactive whiteboard tool. So this was a lesson I taught for upper intermediate. It was speaking, so it's like almost IELTS, right? And the topic was to give a spoken review about a film, a book, or a movie book, or a music album that they listen to, right? So they hear two talks, right? And the talks are like a model for what they're going to speak, right? So you can use the same principle for IELTS, right? You give them a candidate talking for 1 to 2 minutes, and it's a good candidate. So you get them to maybe tick off the expressions that they hear, right? And these are useful expressions that are going to help them structure their talks, right? So they tick them off first of all on the first. Actually, this would be the second listen. The first listen was just a comprehension check. The second listen, they listen and tick off, right? Palomas, right? And you check the answers like that. Okay, here are the answers. Here were the 8 that they heard in the audio. It's based in Paris, stars Ewan McGregor. What I really like about the film, it's set in, it's called, the film was Moulin Rouge, all right? Then you can get them to categorize the expressions because this helps the students to process the meaning of the expressions. So I would have these expressions on sticky notes, and basically it's a categorization activity, right? According to the functions of the expressions. What are the functions? One is describing what the review is about. The other one is like giving their opinion. Right? So the students had to sort them, work together on this whiteboard and sort out the expressions. Right? So that's one that I would recommend activity. You can even help them with some pronunciation. For example, they're doing part 2, right? So what's useful in part 2 is if you could perhaps get them to put pauses in a text. So you play the audio and the students have to mark the pauses or the stressed words, right? So that'll make them aware of the importance of pausing and the rhythm and the stress and the intonation. All right, so I would recommend that. And what else? Oh, yes. Don't forget the Cambridge prepared materials, because those can be useful as well. So here I have something you might like to try. Give me a second. So I'm trying to speaking. All right. Now this is to help them with speaking part 2, which is the long turn, where they have to talk for 1 to 2 minutes. And of course, the students get quite shy about that, don't they? So if you follow this procedure, it's quite easy to develop a 45-minute lesson around this material from Cambridge. Where can you find this material? Can you remember? It's Cambridge, but where? Let me give you the link again. Yes, resources for teachers, isn't it? That's right. Find it there. Look under IELTS. So all you need is a set of cards for each pair of students, a stopwatch, or access to a clock with a second hand for each pair of students. But they can easily do that with telephones, the timer. The aim is to allow students to practice speaking at length on a given topic and raise their awareness of the benefits of thinking about and planning their answers. So divide your class into pairs. Give each pair a set of 20 cards. There are some sample cards here. And what I do is I put them on a interactive whiteboard if I'm teaching online, or indeed, if I'm actually teaching in class, I might use my iPad and have them on here. These little. I share that. No, it's not the one I wanted. No, that's not it either. There we go. So I've got all these topics on sticky notes. Then we tell them how to play the game. Each student in turn picks a card and tells the other the topic written on it. He then talks about the topic for 30 seconds, timed by the partner. The listening student should then ask the speaker a question about what has been said. Both partners have a turn. In the speaking test, candidates have 1 minute to think about that answer and make any notes they want. Time students to do this now using the same topic card. Redivide the class into new pairs. Each student repeats the same topic card, but this time they have to speak for a minute, timed by their new partner. Their partner should then ask the speaker a question about what has been said. Ask some follow-up questions. How was the performance different between the first time and the second time? Which was more difficult? There may be some variation. Some find it easier the second time, even though it was longer, as they're able to use some of their original ideas and expand on them. But some finding it easier the first time, as it wasn't too long. What can you do in the minute preparation time? Concentrate on finding a real personal experience to talk about and write down key vocabulary or ideas. Staying in the same pairs, each student picks a second card. Students take turns to talk about the topic for 1 minute, 1 minute preparation time. Listening students time them and ask them a question at the end. Redivide the class into new pairs. Repeat the activity with 1 minute preparation time before. Repeat steps 7 and 8. And then extend the speaking time to 2 minutes when the students are ready. Hold a final class discussion using the follow-up questions in step 6 to see what the students have learned from their experience of doing the task, plus the follow-up questions below. So additional information, the cards take time to make, so make sure the students don't write on them, then you can reuse them. Add to the cards over time so that there is a wide range of topics. Expand the speaking time to 2 minutes when your students are familiar with the activity. Now this can easily be adapted to the online situation if you're teaching IELTS online. And here's my Figma Jamboard, which I use when I'm counselling students on how to do the IELTS exam speaking. Give you the link to that, shall I? You can have a look. There you go. We don't have time to do it now, but let's just finish off and then do our Kahoot quiz. Just to familiarize you with some of the procedures. So master class advice, just to summarize. Remind your students of the ways that they can prepare immediately before their speaking test. Make sure they have exposure to the English language in the media. It's good to have practiced what you can say about where you live or what you do, but avoid memorizing answers. They won't sound natural, and you won't get marks for language which has obviously been memorized. Speed of delivery is important. A common mistake is to speak too quickly in the test, perhaps because of being nervous. In part 2, write down keywords that you can use for each of the points in the task card you were given. Use the 4 points to structure your 2-minute talk and use the key vocabulary in the notes to develop each point. The 4th point always asks them to explain something. And this is often the one that gives them the most to talk about. They should choose fillers they think are appropriate. No, let me think. To avoid pauses. Avoid phrases such as, how do you say? Because that looks like you have a gap. Yeah. In the language. It's important pronunciation, intonation, stress counts for 25% of the speaking mark. Don't worry tell them not to worry too much about a few mistakes, right? Don't get hung up about the mistakes. If you made a mistake, if they made a mistake and correct themselves, that also works in their favor. Now, it's okay to correct themselves. In fact, it's good because it shows the examiner they're aware of the grammar. Give more details about each of the points they make. Explain answers by giving reasons. In part 3, get them to weigh up both parts of the question and give examples to support them. So they need practice extending answers to questions, giving reasons. Mention opposing views to their own. Finish, rehearse or study. Rehearse, work, or study and where you live questions, but make sure they sound natural. Give your opinion. In my view, as far as I'm concerned, generally speaking, I'd say. Practice IELTS, typical IELTS topics. Education, health, fitness, travel, transport, leisure, communication. Encourage them to smile and relax during the test. They shouldn't let the digital recorder make them feel nervous. It's just like having a mobile phone in front of them. Yep. And any questions? All right, we've got about 15 minutes, so we've got time enough for a Kahoot on speaking. So to test your knowledge of the speaking test. Let's play. Please join. Okay, let's begin. Sorry, it's paused. Okay. There we go. How long is the complete IELTS speaking test? Yes, 11 to 14 minutes. It's usually 14 minutes. And they allow 1 minute for extra time for procedure. So effectively it's 15. Now, why did they say 11? Well, if the candidates are very weak, right, they may not say very much. So it might end early. Well done, Anna. How many people are in the room? Yes, one examiner and one candidate. Although there is an exception. If the candidate is a menor de edad, right, then there's an IELTS staff member has to be there. So that then it would be 3 people. How many parts in the speaking test? Easy enough. Yeah, good job. How many minutes is part 1? Yeah. If you're not sure of the answers, you can always look on the handout that I gave you earlier. It's a good idea to have eye contact with your examiner. This can be difficult for introverts. Yeah. Well done, Nicole. Simple topics in part 1? Yeah. Which topic would not be included in speaking part 1? Yeah, it's going to be politics, isn't it? Although politics could be included in part 3. There's no real restriction about, politics is often seen as a taboo, but actually it could be included if the student brings it up. How long should the candidate talk in part 2? Yes, it's actually 2 minutes. Yeah. 1 minute is the preparation time, yeah? How much preparation time? Oh, we can skip that then. I just told you 1 minute. Next is the answer. Umberto's still in the lead. How many minutes is part 3? Yeah, 4 to 5. Umberto's still in the lead. Which statement is true about part 3 compared to parts 1 and 2? Yeah, abstract. Candidate results? Who knows? About 2 weeks, that's about right, yeah. Normal to interrupt test takers to ask additional questions? The answer is true, yes. Good job. True. It's okay to add extra detail to a story which may or may not have happened. Does it matter that it's true or not? That's interesting. The answer is true, yes. Because, well, the examiner doesn't know, and what they're interested in is samples of the test taker's language, right, and how complex it is. They're not really interested in the truth or falsity of what they're saying, right? So they're actually looking for language samples. It's a good idea to bring up-to-date slang. False, yeah. Slang is not really appropriate, right? Yeah, I'm gonna smack my bitch up, that sort of stuff. No, you don't want to get them to use that. And an examiner friend of mine, like, heard one of his candidates use the MF word, right? Motherfucker. And that was obviously he didn't the student got lower grades for appropriacy. Yeah. So no, it doesn't impress. Colloquialism's not so bad, yeah? But slang, no. Idioms, fine. Collocations, fine. Yeah? The examiner really wants you to do well, perform badly, do poorly, or be nervous and afraid. Yes. Believe it or not, they do want you to do well. Extend your answers and don't wait for the examiner to do blank you with a question. Yeah, prompt. Keyword. Well done, Anna. It will help if you speak to the examiner with confidence. What do you think? Yeah. Penultimate. Is it natural, naughty, nervous, or native? The answer is natural. Last one. There's no harm in taking a brief pause to think about what to say. The answer is yes, it's okay to take a brief pause. Yeah, because you've got to organize your thoughts. And that's what we do in normal conversation. You know, sometimes if a topic is difficult, we want to organize our ideas, maybe think about what we want to say and in what order. So no problem. Yeah, even a 9 in IELTS might pause slightly at times. Well done, Anna. Umberto, Nicole. Felicidades. Now, next week is our final session. So I'd like you to tell me what you'd like to focus on in the last session, and then I will adjust the material accordingly. So here is a Google form. Please complete it. It takes very little time, really. Which 2 papers of the IELTS would you like to review in our final session? Yes, when is it? That's a good point. When is our final session? It's on May the 2nd. Ah, that's because there's an Easter holiday, isn't there? Yeah, so it's right after May the 1st. So you've got all that time to catch up on maybe some work that you haven't done. Plenty of time, haven't you, to work on doing some catch up. Thank you. So what do you have to do between now and the next live session? Let's check. This is group 6. Okay, so it's productive tasks, right? Lexical resource, paraphrasing, and just maybe if you're missing some work you've not done, maybe you didn't do some work on the speaking test. And there's some more resources as well you could look through. over the Easter holidays. Right. So thank you very much. I will prepare for the final session then.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And it looks like reading and writing is the favorites, right? So we're going to work on those. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Have
Bye.
a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.